Hi, everyone. It's me, Gervase Kolmos, intuitive coach, mama of 3, and your host for this podcast on my 37th birthday. I was going to say my 37th year of life, but it's not, it's a day. It is only appropriate that I kept trying to wait to press record until the baby's up with the nanny until he would stop screaming, but it's not going to happen. And I always said, it's got to be real. Like I got things to do. So we're going to hit record and just go for it. Thank you for your patience. I know there has been a bit of a lag, a bit of a pause to this podcast, but it was a beautiful integration period for me and my family. We have, since the last pod, moved into a new home. We're still in Charleston, South Carolina, but we moved from West Ashley to James Island, and we love it. Like, we fucking love this home. We love this neighborhood. We like the feeling of expansiveness that my family is experiencing right now is just something I don't think we really fully believed we would ever feel. Which sounds crazy because we've done a lot of work on like being abundant and feeling expansive and allowing ourselves to lean into our desires and dream big. And I don't know, for some reason, I think my husband and I just kind of were like, no, this house is good. This tiny house we live in is great. And it was so great for the season of our life. And then this dream house just landed in our lap, and we have just been soaking it up, unpacking, like just getting settled. And I really wanted to be intentional about that time and not feel like, oh, I'm doing all the things and I'm just doing a podcast just because. And I knew when I have something to say, something new to say, I'll share. And so, guys, I got a lot of shit to say. I'm back. Today's podcast episode is an interview I did with one of my best friends, Stephanie Burg. Oh my God, this conversation is so important. I really, really, really hope that you share it with your girlfriends, that you listen to it multiple times, because some of the stuff I wanted her specifically to talk about the new paradigm of female friendship, because she is one of my friends that I feel like we walk this talk. We are like intentional about our friendship and have had the ups and downs. And we talk about that. We talk about our fight on this episode. But also she's just so wise and eloquent anyway. And she does her own work in the world. She is, in her own words, I don't want to mess it up, a trauma-informed, certified, integrative health and transformational life coach. She does it all. Breathwork Facilitator, Somatic Healing and Embodiment Guide, International Retreat and Sacred Circle Facilitator, and steward to plant medicines. She does all the things. My husband jokes when I spend time with her. He's like, oh, are the witches congregating, you and your witches? And I'm like, whatever. Yes, we are. And it's the best. So she is just, I'm so grateful for her in my life. And I know that you will just get so much out of the wisdom that she shares and her unique perspective on feminine relationships and like the wounding that happens between women and why the stereotypes exist about gossip and cattiness and jealousy and comparison and how to fix it. Super important. Also just realized my dad is snaking a tub upstairs while I record this. So add that to the list of weird things happening in the background of this pod. Okay. 2 more things I want to share before we dive in with Stephanie. 1, if you don't know, I launched the Femme Paradigm Mastermind last night. Well, really today on my birthday. And this is a 6-month coaching container. There's 3 levels. There's a VIP option for those who are a little extra like myself and like tons of support and one-on-one attention in their coaching journey. And then there's there's the Femme Paradigm Online, which is a more accessible, affordable option for those who are wanting just a little less high touch, but still want a safe space, a 6-month container with other paradigm shifters, because this container is all about leaning into your femme superpowers. This is about all of the untapped feminine wisdom within you that you are literally missing out on every day to help you make decisions, grow your business, be a good mom, solve problems with your partner, like all of the things that we think the answers are outside of ourselves. And it's something that I've deepened into so much over the last couple of years, just like anchoring into total sovereignty as a woman and not apologizing for any part of me and not judging or shaming or overthinking or doubting, and really just total self-trust, total dedication to my intuition. I know what I fucking know. And when I don't, I'm not going to somebody else to give me the answers. I'm going to somebody else who can help me lead myself to my own answers, because there is no one size fits all blueprint. So I am just really, really psyched and slightly terrified to launch my first mastermind in a couple of years. This is not just for entrepreneurs. It's not even just for moms. It's not for working. It's for the woman who is ready to get a leaned back approach of self-help, who doesn't have to like do the work in a way that means you have to like do worksheets and, homework and, the work should feel like a luxurious gift to yourself, a container with 7 other women, this mastermind, where you meet weekly for 90-minute Zoom calls and coaching with me, and have that Facebook access to me, the other women in your mastermind, and the femmes in the online paradigm. I mean, it's just about gifting yourself, not just permission to have the things you desire, but space, time, a new paradigm of like femme wisdom and intuition and leadership, and also a new femme paradigm of friendship, a new way to do womanhood, a new way to do sisterhood, like you being the paradigm shifter, you being the change that you wish to see in all of your relationships. We're going to talk all about that and then some in this 6-month container. We start March 8th. So check it out. Link is in the show notes. I almost said in my bio. I'm like, what platform am I on right now? Put it in the show notes. Would love for you to join us. And the other thing I want to say is, in this podcast, I feel like because I'm talking to a fellow coach, I said something that I listened back to it, and I was worried that the women in my life that I love so much and I'm so grateful for, that I could literally cry, might hear it and make it mean something or create a story about it. And I just want to say, all of you who have been in my life this whole time, I love you. Thank you for witnessing me, seeing me, holding me. My middle is banging on the door. Please don't make this conversation with Stephanie mean anything about our friendships. I have so many diverse and beautiful friendships with different women, and some of them I've had my whole life. And I think in this conversation, I was speaking very broadly about my lifetime of friendships. That's 37 years of different female friendships, and many have come and gone. And so just know, if you are somebody that is just a sister to me, that I'm not talking about you, and I love you. And we are also, or not we are also, but like, thank you for also walking hand in hand with me in this new paradigm. And that doesn't mean it's perfect. We're human. We're also fucking up all the time, but we have faced things together and we fix it. And I'm so, so grateful. So without further ado, Stephanie Burg, we are live. Okay. Here is my beautiful friend, Stephanie Burg. So first off, I want to share how we met. I've been thinking about this because I'm so excited that we're going to talk about like a new paradigm of friendship today on the podcast, and like really share a conversation that we literally had this conversation the last time we met for coffee on your porch, like a couple weeks ago. And I was like, oh my God, like the world needs this conversation. Like this should be a mainstream conversation. And then when I was prepping for our interview, I was like, how do I even know Stephanie? I always come back to this. I'm like, how are we friends? How did we just so perfectly land in each other's lives at the perfect time? So thank you for making time for me. I love you.
I love you always. You're like one of my favorite people to talk to.
Oh my gosh.
Talk with.
Yeah. Same. So do you remember how we met?
Yes.
Did I just like cold email you and say like, will you be my friend?
Well, no, I mean, the story that I always remember is that you were writing for the Charleston City paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I was dancing for Charleston Ballet Theater, and you reviewed one of my performances. And I remembered your name. It's like, that's such an interesting name. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. It's like
so weird. Everybody else knows how.
Before you were Kolmos, it was like your maiden name. And so I was always like, okay, who's this person? And then you came into what used to be Dance Effects.
Yes. That's my first memory of you.
To take a hip hop class.
Yes.
And I was like in transition from my dancing career to doing like coaching. And I was in school and I was working administratively, you know, for Dance Effects. And I was sitting behind the desk and you were coming in for class and we had this moment of connection. I was like, oh yeah, I know who you are. Like, you knew who I was. And then you reached out to me when you started coaching, like you were going to coaching school.
Yeah.
And we met, and then we just sort of always kept in touch after that, like in some form.
But which is funny because, okay, two things. One, I remember that meeting at Dance Effects so vividly because you were sitting behind the desk, you had this high bun, and I was like, she is so pretty. Oh my gosh. Like I literally remember that moment. But also about the coaching thing, because I feel like everybody says, oh, I'm becoming a coach. Like, can I pick your brain? Or like, can we meet? And so obviously you get a little fatigued by that, you know, when you've been in the industry a little bit and you feel like, okay, like I want to help everybody I can, but I can't meet for coffee all this off, you know, like how to navigate that. But for us, it just kind of worked out because I'm pretty sure I was like, hey, you're a coach. I'm a coach. Want to meet for coffee. And that's exactly what happened. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And normally like, I don't really do that because I don't always have time.
Right.
But I think back then I just like, for whatever reason, I was probably like a gut instinct. I was like, yeah, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
Oh my
However
gosh.
many years later. Like, I don't even remember when that was.
Well, that would be, so Aria's 7. So probably 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I've known you for 6 years. So I was trying to think about what makes our friendship different and how do we keep coming back to each other? How are we so connected yet our worlds are separate? Our friendship circles don't overlap. I have friends that don't know who you are, probably vice versa. I mean, and then I have friends who know who you are, but they're just like, oh, that's her friend that's separate. Like we don't mix very often. And I think it's this wonderful thing about us. But I think I was so drawn to you because every friend does something different, right? Like we all have people in our lives that like fill a certain need, if you will, except I don't want to use the word need because that's kind of what we're going to go into, like being too needy in friendship. But I think something about our friendship is that you're a coach, I'm a coach. We're both very, very good at holding space for other people. What I can't speak for you, but I can tell you that what I have experienced is that I'm so good at holding space for other people. And then I forget that that's my professional expertise. And so then when I go to take up space, when I need somebody to hold space for me, I can be a bit like disappointed. I can feel a little let down, like, oh, like I don't feel quite seen. I don't feel quite held, and not all the time. And I'm just like so lucky I have such wonderful women in my life and all of them are different. But I just think like, if I think back over to the thread of my life of like different moments and times, especially like when I'm pregnant or when I'm experiencing another bout of depression or when my brother died or when there's just been like really hard times in my life, lots of times I've been surrounded by women, you know, and it's such a gift. It's so rare that I'm with a woman and I'm taking up space and I feel seen. I feel held. And so I know that in our friendship, I appreciate so much that you fully see me and hold space for me the way that you would a client almost, you know, I mean, I'm guessing, well, actually I have worked with you. So yes, it is the same. I can contest. It is exactly the same. Right. And yet we have so much in common, yet we're like worlds apart. And so I just think there's this magical thing between us because of both being coaches. Do you agree that that's part of it?
Yeah, I do. I think, we do have so many things in common that, on the surface level, it might not, like you mentioned, our worlds kind of not overlapping, which is interesting because our husbands now have this friendship too, which is so beautiful. True. And, it's like there isn't necessarily crossover in terms of like what you would think as far as friend groups, but so much of like our journeys and our healing and some of our like family of origin stuff is similar. And then there's that piece around, coaching as well. But I think, what you're sort of speaking to is that when you have the ability to hold tremendous space for the people in your life and your clients, and you have like listening, which I think is an undervalued resource in our community, in our world, when you have the ability to listen so deeply to what people are saying underneath their words, that's a really powerful strength and a gift that you share with the world. And it's also something that can make it easy for you to hide behind, and one of the things that I have found from my perspective in our relationship is that I can't really hide behind that with you. And I think you feel that way with me too. Yes. It's like I feel like we hold one another to this level of support where it's like, no, but what's really going on? Like, how are you doing? Because it can be easy to just always be the one that's holding, the space or holding, that listening ear for the people in your life. And sometimes the people in your life that are on the receiving end of that listening, they can get really used to you being in that role. And so it may feel a little bit more challenging to take up the space that you need in order to feel met in that dynamic. So, that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about our friendship is that, that is a natural gift that you have, a natural gift that I have. And at the same time, like we're not going to like hide behind that with one another. Like we can't, we just can't.
So profoundly eloquent what you just said versus how I tried to explain it. Kind of mind blowing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And as you were saying that too, I was remembering we also share a mentor.
Yes.
Like, and so that was such an overlap for a while. And so something that I want to talk about on this conversation is like when you are in community with other women who are doing the work on themselves, how different that is than just being in community with women. And so I feel so lucky to have been in containers with you, with one of our mentors, Cora Poage, love you. And had that like binding experience, but in a container where everything that you just said, right? Where it's like such a deeper layer of connection. It's just so like no hiding, like holding each other accountable, but also like holding each other, like just being emotionally held is such a gift. I can hear my kids screaming outside. Hopefully you can too. So I wonder, so this is something I started thinking about when I was thinking about this conversation is, do you think if more women had been in containers like we have, that more women would enjoy the kinds of connections we have with each other and with other women? Because like I said, like we both have, lots of really fulfilling friendships, but I think that is a connecting theme, right? Like we've done work, we've been in containers, we know what it's like to be part of like this new paradigm of sisterhood versus the old, like, okay, we're in a sorority. What does that mean? Like, what does that look like? How does that feel? Do you feel like that is part of the secret sauce?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I would imagine that there are people that have been in sororities and had really beautiful experiences, and yet, like, if we look at, I mean, my mind's going like all the way back to, Salem times where there were like, witch trials and, women being burned at the stake because they were, sensual or healers or powerful, and how that was threatening to other, to the men and also to other women, so there was a lot of that, like turning other women in, and, just like my mind goes all the way back to that. But when we think about how, so much of our like lineage and our ancestry, our ancestors, there was a lot of that pitting women against each other, not only in terms of, like the competition, the jealousy, like if she's powerful, that's a threat to me. It was really like that lineage is really built on like separation and isolation of women. Like you think about like way back when we were all living in communities and tribes, and women were supporting one another and, helping take care of the children and tending to, the sick, and the men were out like hunting. It was just a different vibe. Whereas I always think about like 1950s housewives where, I think about Mad Men, like Betty Draper. Yeah, I don't know if you've watched that show before, but like isolated, alone, like just having this, they were kept in the home, separate. And so there's a lot of these interesting like threads back to, the progression of our relationships with one another. And, I, of course, growing up in the world of dance, like had lots of experiences of that, like cattiness and backstabbing and gossiping and jealousy. And, and certainly in high school, like I had a lot of mean girl stuff. I was the victim of a lot of mean girl stuff, so I think like, that sort of been accepted, it's like if this person looks better than me or is smarter than I am perceived, this is all perception, or if this person has achieved something that I can't, like the best way for me to handle that is to lash out, to project my jealousy and insecurity onto this person, so like there's that old paradigm. And at the same time, I think that that's not everyone's experience. I think that there are certainly people that, like I said, have had positive experiences in a sorority setting or in groups of women or like teams, like things like that. But I mean, I don't know, this newer paradigm of quote unquote sisterhood, we kind of hear that term a lot, or women empowering women. I think that there's something really important about that collective support and uplifting of one another, especially after such a like long history of that not being the case. Yeah. And also like the patriarchy and, these capitalistic sort of tendencies of our culture that promote this like feeling of less than, and like only one version of womanhood is, accepted. It's like women are supposed to look like the cover of Cosmo or, be whatever the things are. So there's so many pieces to this. I think like, yes, it's important to be in community with women doing the work, but that doesn't make us immune to the wounds coming out. Totally. It's like when we're in a space that we're with other women that are also, that women that are like-minded, like-hearted, and they're taking steps forward to sort of better themselves and create, these lives and goals, and all of that. I think that's really, really important. And like I said, it doesn't make us immune to the wounds of sisterhood coming up. And so that's where I think the safety of the container is really, really important. And, I certainly have witnessed throughout my years, like, I mean, I can use my career in dance, for example, like there was no, like, I mean, it was like that like shittiness was the fuel, like for a lot of those dynamics. But having spaces where the gossip isn't tolerated, where it's like that judgment isn't tolerated, and where self-responsibility is really, really promoted and advocated. I think that there's just by human nature, like our shit's going to come up, like our human emotions, our human wounds are going to come up, and having like the support to work through those on your own, and actually like really, really taking stock of how you respond to another woman's success or, whatever the thing is, I think it's, the community is really important, and we gotta do the work on ourselves. So I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah, well, so much, because when I'm thinking so many things, I'm thinking, first of all, like, oh yeah, we're all human. So nobody gets a hall pass. Like, it doesn't. And that's something I'm really glad you brought that up, because I just feel like sometimes in the personal development world, it can be a little bit of bypassing, right? Like, oh, well, I used to be in this mean girl world, and now I never have another wound triggered. And when I was hearing you say sisterhood, I realized, I think when I think new paradigm, I think friendship. Because I think when I discovered personal growth and quote unquote sisterhood, I was like, oh, this is like joining a sorority. This is like a special, woo woo, like sacred space holding community. And it's magical and wonderful. And I still have to live in the real world with like people that aren't in this, container of mystical, magical space holding. And what I realize, it's like, the sisterhood is amazing and it's incredible. And if you've experienced it, wonderful. But then I do think we're being invited now to bring it to our friendships, right? Because the human stuff, like you said, like the wounding comes up no matter what, like it'll just keep coming up. Even if you are part of a sacred sisterhood, or I keep saying sacred, but like a safe, I should say, a place where you feel safe among other women, you're still going to be out here in the world, and your, mother is going to trigger a wound, or your sister-in-law, or your friend from high school, or whatever. And so that stuff is going to keep coming up, and you're not immune from it. And so maybe you can talk a little bit more about quote unquote the wounding, because I know when we were having our talk that day on your porch, and we were sharing like our own personal experiences of where, we have triggered other women or vice versa, and why that has come up. And I remember sharing, a story with you of how I had projected something out at my sister. And then I was like, whoa, why did I just do that? Why I felt wounded. Like there was a wounding that happened by something that she said about spending time with her other friend. And I felt like I was in competition with her other friend, and I lashed out, and then I hurt her. And then we had to have a conversation. And then I realized instantly, as soon as we had the conversation, like it came back, and I was like, oh, whoa, that was me acting out. That was not me in alignment. That was just a triggered response. And so I think also, people throw around the word trigger a lot too, but people don't really know, like, what does that look like in the real world? How we normally respond to it, and what's a better way, Yeah. And so we were sharing, I remember when we were talking, I was like, but why did I do that? Like, why did I have to cause harm to my sister before I could come back to, oh yeah, like self-responsibility? Like, this is not about her. This is like, I felt like rejected or insecure or something. I don't know what it was in that moment. And I think you said to me, well, because you're human, first of all, like give yourself some compassion. Like it's okay. You're human, which of course is so funny, because that's, I feel like, what I tell people all day long. So it's so nice to have it reflected in me sometimes. But what are some of the other wounds? Let's like keep using that terminology that you have experienced as a woman in the 21st century.
Yeah. Wow. I think this is such a rich topic.
Yeah.
And, I think just to kind of reflect something that you shared, like, it's not like we're going to get to a certain level of growth or healing where we never react or we never trigger someone else. And I think the most important thing is like really, really being conscious of those times and those events and situations. And, it's one thing to react and like project all of our BS onto someone else and not take any responsibility for how we're feeling. It's another thing to react and then make efforts to repair, which is like what you did with your sister, to like say like, wow, like I realized like that was about me and blah, 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 blah. And like, you know, that I think creates a level of intimacy and deeper trust within the relationships. Now, what I think is an issue is when we project our wounds onto other people. And so, you know, what I mean by that, for anyone who like doesn't know what I'm talking about when I'm saying projection, it's like, you know, often the thing that we fear the most, you know, our deepest wounds, maybe that's abandonment, or that's rejection, or a wound of betrayal, or feeling
disappointing someone,
for me. You know, all of those things, like we have those wounds can be so tricky and so deeply, you know, in our system that we kind of like, it's like we're looking for that in the outside world, these events, these situations to prove that we are unlovable or that we're going to be abandoned. And so we kind of like put that out there on other people, you know? And so kind of to crystallize that into an example is like just recognizing when we react from our wounding, when we react in a way, like say we feel jealous or we feel threatened or insecure. And then, you know, here's a perfect example. Like you're looking on Instagram and you see that so-and-so was hanging out with so-and-so.
Yes,
and why weren't you
example?
Why weren't you invited? And all of a sudden you go through this cascade of like, they don't like me, like I'm not good enough, you know, they're whatever, I'm left
mean
out,
girls,
all of that stuff. Yes. When like, that's the first story we tell ourselves. That's the first response that we have. When there are so many other possibilities to what is actually going on, like our thoughts are not always the truth. And yet we think they are a lot of times, and it can create a lot of pain, right? So maybe it's like it doesn't have anything to do with you at all. Maybe those two people, you know, happen to see each other out and whatever, or maybe they hadn't seen each other in a while and needed to spend time to nourish their own connection. Like there are all these other things, you know. I think another good example of this is like if someone doesn't respond to your text, right?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh my God. You might think like
anybody who knows me.
Your first response would be like, they're mad at me. They don't like me anymore. And so if we can actually take that as an example and be like, okay, well, I'm responding and thinking that they're mad at me or they don't like me. Like, what does that actually mean about how I'm treating myself, or how I believe about my own, what do I believe about my own lovability? Like, what am I believing about myself? What am I telling myself? You know, because the truth is perhaps like they're really busy, they're sick, they just got some really bad news, or their car just broke down. You know, we never know actually what is truly going on with someone unless we ask, and hopefully they're courageous enough to tell us the truth if it's, you know, something deeper. But we often jump to these responses that come from the wounding instead of saying like, okay, what does this actually mean about me? Like, what am I making this mean about me? Can I sit with my response so that I can actually get to something that's a little bit more real? And kind of like, I mean, if you have all of these possibilities, why do you jump to the one that's like, I'm not good enough?
The worst. Yeah. That makes you feel like shit.
Yes.
Why? Okay. I feel like this is a good opportunity to talk about our one fight.
Okay.
And then as you were saying that, I was remembering what we talked about when we had coffee a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about, we were like, okay, so what happens? Why do we get triggered? And then like project my shit at my sister. And then why did I have to hurt her in the first place? And okay, I'm human. But so the right process here is like, fuck up, face it, fix it. And I was like, oh, that's good. I got to write that down. And then I wrote it down and then totally forgot about it until this one moment. But I think it's also so helpful when you apply it to the real world, like actual examples, because this stuff happens all of the time. And so, for example, you and me, do you mind if I share this story?
Go for it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, I mean, this is going to be Cliff Notes, and it's been a couple of years, but long story short, I was texting you and and I felt like you were taking too long to respond. And then you were texting me, and then I was always changing our plans. Is that like a pretty good summary? Like I wasn't prioritizing our time the way that you felt I should. And then I felt like you weren't giving me enough attention as I thought you should. And it got to this point where I kept being like, okay, what is the story? Why do I feel like she's mad at me? I feel like she doesn't like me. Like what is happening? And so we finally had to have a conversation, and it was terrifying. And it was one of these things where it's like, was it you? This was this part of our conversation where we were saying, like, when you have this confrontational moment with another girl, you feel like you're going to die. Like it feels like death because you're so scared that she's going to reject you, or like the amount of vulnerability required. And in my experience, I've had a lot of conversations like this, and not all have gone well. And it is the most vulnerable I have ever felt. That fear of rejection or something. So that's real. I mean, that feeling was real. And I can remember, it's not just with our conversation, it's been with many. And so we sat down together and we were like, okay, it sounds like we need to have a conversation face to face. So it was like, okay, maybe we're past the fuck up stage. Now we need to face it and fix it. So I don't really want to face it. I want to fix it, but I don't want to face it. Like that feels really, really icky and gross and terrifying. And what if you don't like me? Like, what if what if we break up, literally? And so it sounds so ridiculous, but I have literally seen this dynamic play out. Oh yeah. Girl friendships more times than I can count. And I feel like it needs to be addressed because it keeps happening because we don't even understand that we're operating from our wounding. And so we sat down together. We each shared how we were feeling. Pretty sure I cried. Pretty sure you teared up. Pretty sure we both realized, like, we took responsibility for, okay, you're right. I'm so sorry that I think because I have kids, like my time is more important than your time. And I can just, change our schedule and flake and bail and whatever. And it's almost like I'm operating from this premise of like, well, what are you doing? Like, text me right back. And we both, I don't know. It was like, for me, it was a really like medicinal experience, because we faced it together and like both spoke our truth, which felt really scary. And then we were like, oh, okay, I see you. I see why that would feel, I can see how that would feel scary to you or how that would be misconstrued, but this is what's actually happening for me and vice versa. And then, okay, I love you. This is what I actually feel about the situation. Here's what I actually desire from this friendship. Can we move on? And I know I've had a few friendships where it's like, we can't move on. Yeah. It's over. And I think it's important to talk about this because it has been coming up for my clients a lot. Yeah. Like they are constantly asking me about fighting with friends or breaking up with friends or, you're growing apart, but what do you do? And I think maybe this is part of that. There's no like one size fits all, but this is part of it. And I think something that I really value about our friendship is that we have had those gross fuck up, face it situations. And we both rose. Yeah. We both like took responsibility and, with humility, like saw the truth in each other of, okay, this is what you're experiencing. I know that feels real for you and I need to respect that. Yeah. And then we moved on. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Is and that, I don't want to, that's my experience of it. So I don't want to project my experience of it on you. So if you would add anything.
No, I think that's really helpful. And, and there's also something like, text and yes. It's like a lot of wires can get crossed in text. And I also think that it's really important that we're kind of having this conversation, post 2020 and like still in the midst of a pandemic when we've all been going through quite a bit, over this last, however freaking long it's been,
It's been a while.
and there's a lot of stuff that's kind of coming to the surface in terms of like growing apart and what's no longer aligned. And I think it's really an important part of, this shedding and entering into the next phases of our lives, because we're all kind of realizing it's like the energies on the planet, the energies of the collective are really stewarding us into this place of, greater, truth to ourselves, like being more honoring of ourselves. And so I just want to
it's the word that comes to mind.
And growth is rarely comfortable. And often it's really messy and painful. And so I think that it's important to kind of normalize that aspect of where we all are and like what's coming up for your clients. And I think like when I think back to that, that time for us, it like that in that particular conversation, I think that was whenever that was, I had literally been like traveling once a month. Like I was like not in Charleston very much, like with retreats and all of that. And so like, I wasn't actually thinking that I was, not being, there for you. Like I was like, I'm just doing my thing, and so that was something that is really like, I think I noticed in that moment, like, oh, like I could at least, reach out to her and just let her know that I love her, and especially like we all like need love in different ways. And often we attempt to give love the way we, need it or want it. And that might not actually be the thing that makes someone else feel really, loved and supported. And, like, for example, I'm a hardcore introvert. Like I love people and I love spending time with, people and my friends. And like, I spend a lot of really deep, intimate time with my clients, so by the time it gets to like the weekend, I really need to like go into my little crab shell, and like, and just like not talk to anyone and kind of be by myself. And that's something like, it wasn't until like probably my early to mid 30s that I really recognized that about myself. I was always holding myself to be an extrovert and didn't know why I was always so exhausted. And then I did like a Myers-Briggs thing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm an introvert, blah, blah, blah. So, for me as an introvert, like it's actually an act of love when someone can give me space and not make it mean anything about our relationship, like, and so, and I think that that's something like in those moments of tension, it's important to understand how you want and need to be loved so that you can share that with someone. And I think like that was something that kind of occurred with us where we were both like, I'm loving in this way and I'm loving in this way. And like, we were kind of
words of affirmation and quality time, extrovert over here. I'm like puppy,
like I need to go into my cave and just like, be alone for a while. And so like, I think that that's a really key part of it too, but I want to kind of circle back to that actual conversation, which I feel like, at least in my experience and what I remember of it, is that like, I went into that, and I can't speak for you, but I went into that conversation with the intention of really hearing what you had to say and like, no, and I was scared too, like, I feel like sometimes when like we go into those experiences, it's terrifying, especially when we've been vulnerable in the past and we had a parent or friends that reacted in a way that made us feel misunderstood or unsafe, or like our boundaries were violated, or like our character was attacked, and especially for those of us who grew up in homes where there was more of that emotional violence or abuse or personality disorders, it can feel so terrifying to speak your needs, because that's not something that was valued or cherished growing up. And so I think that, that's a really important piece of it. Our past often dictates how we show up to these conversations. And so anyway, I went into that conversation knowing that you were safe. You were a safe person in my life and someone that I deeply care about and love. And that like, it wasn't going to, like, my intention was like, let's repair this in whatever way that we can. And really like, how do I honor myself and also really hear what Gervase has to say? And so going into it with that, like, and I feel like for whatever reason, we both met each other in that space. And it was kind of like that sort of neutralized, like I didn't come on the defense, and I don't feel like you came on the defense. It was just like we love each other. Like, how do we actually navigate this, and how do we talk through it in a way where we both feel heard, which hasn't always been the case in my history with people, or I didn't even feel like I could have that conversation, like I didn't even feel like I could take like a tiny baby step towards speaking my truth because it didn't feel safe. And so I think that that's important. It's like important to acknowledge that we've had experiences where it hasn't felt safe to speak our truth. And so often that's like the hardest hurdle. And again, to recognize, like when you speak your truth, when you set a boundary with someone and how they respond, that actually tells you a lot about the health of the relationship, the health of that person. Doesn't mean that anyone's perfect. And it doesn't mean that, if you get defensive that you're unhealthy, it's just like, there's a spectrum of things, and it's, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but that's
I love it.
My remembrance.
No, I love it. And I think it's important to note, like, the word safe feels really important to ground into for a second, because you might be listening and be like, well, what does that mean to be a safe person? So I have had conversations like this. One specifically comes to mind where I came with that intention, like, I'm going to be vulnerable. I love you. Let's make this right. And I felt not only rejected, but judged, almost not criticized, but like ridiculed. I felt ridiculed. Yeah. And I was so shocked and confused by that response that then I was like, this is not safe. And I'm already here in this deeply vulnerable situation, having this conversation. And now I've realized too late that I am no longer safe. Yeah. And so what that looks like, that's what it looks like when you're in the conversation. And then the wounding on the other side of that is, I feel ridiculed. I feel rejected. I feel like unlovable. I feel fundamentally flawed. Is that all on the other person? No, like I have to do some of my own work. And that's when it's my turn to say, okay, this relationship is not healthy for me. You might feel totally in integrity with what just happened, but for me, that was not safe and that did not feel good. So now it's my job to make amends, and then that's a really uncomfortable process too for a lot of women, because they want to be nice.
Yeah.
So being nice means that I'm a doormat. I never speak my truth. And even when I come to a conversation like that and I feel disrespected, well, I can't just end that relationship. I can't break up. And it's like navigating this new paradigm where, well, you can break up, but it doesn't have to be this dramatic, gossipy, smear campaign. It can just be like, oh, I see that we don't bring out the best in each other and we're not really seeing eye to eye. So I'm going to move on. Yeah. And I'm not going to make that mean anything about you. I'm just going to know that for me, that was not a safe and healthy relationship. And I think the reframe there is so, 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 so important, because what happens a lot is, I could have gone into that one example I shared where I felt unsafe and then created a story. Women are unsafe. Mm-hmm. I'm a victim. Girls are bitches and bullies. And so now I'm not going to seek community ever. I'm not going to seek any friendship. Yeah. I'm not going to pursue any type of expansive friendship. The end, because I'm making it mean all friendship is unsafe. All females are unsafe.
Yep. And better off alone.
Which is so clearly not true. I'm trying to think where I want to go with this, because I think it's such an important conversation, and there's literal specific examples in our lives where this is just keeps coming up that I just think people are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, I've had that experience. Oh my God, I want to have this experience. So maybe what about if we share the best way to navigate this? So I think I just gave an example of if you find yourself in in a relationship or in a conversation and you realize, okay, not safe, not healthy, I'm going to move on or make amends or whatever it looks like. But what about for women who want to rise and they're like, I want to be the leader of this paradigm shift. I want to embody this shift so that I can attract more of these super healthy relationships. What would you say in your experience are the top behaviors or mindsets or actions to take?
Yeah. Whoa, gosh, this is such a good conversation. It's like, these, just having this conversation, I think is really healing. And it's, I also want to say, like, I don't feel like I have any of this figured out 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very much like walking this path. And I think many of us are because, we're at a place in our lives, especially during this pandemic, where we're realizing how important connection and community and healthy relating is. And it's scary sometimes, like to be deeply intimate with someone it can be terrifying. And on the spectrum of terror, it's like, there's this like end of that spectrum, which is the terror and like the vulnerability. And then there's on the other end of the spectrum is the reward and the deep nourishment that comes from being intimate with someone. But I really like envision it as like constantly like meeting those new levels of it. Like we can only go deep in relationships as we have been able to go within ourselves. And that's like a constant process of like death and rebirth, And so the question, like, what was the question? I'm going off on a tangent. Yeah, I think, okay, so if you find yourself in like an unhealthy situation and you want to be the leader, like I think there's, on the one hand, it's really like validating the response that we have. So number one is like, if you're in a conversation, for example, and you feel unsafe, or if you've had a couple of interactions and you feel unsafe, usually many women will discount their response, discount their body's response to that level of.
Yes. I'm glad let's go into that. Cause I was going to say intuition is a big piece of this too.
Yes. And like it's body wisdom and intuition. Those like intuition and your spirit and your body are like, I'm crossing my fingers.
In
like,
a relationship.
Yes. It's like best friends. Like they speak the same language, sensation, images, like they don't speak English or whatever your primary like native tongue is, and we often will go into our minds and discredit that physical response that we receive or that intuitive nudge. That's like, this isn't really, it's the red flag. Like some people talk about red flags, those flags, whether they're white, red, or freaking yellow, whatever color they're always there. Right. And so I think to number one, really honor your experience. And if that means that looks like placing a hand on your body and actually saying, I hear you, I believe you, like to yourself, I hear you, I believe you. Like what is you're experiencing is real to you in this moment. And then, after that, really, really doing the work to examine those feelings, like, is this sense of, like not being safe, is that me? Is that my edge of intimacy and it's feeling a little scary? Or is this actually that this relationship is unhealthy, or many like shades in between? There are lots of different possibilities, but I think it takes that level of inquiry within yourself to actually realize like, I'm always safe and I'm never safe. Right. Like,
so like good.
I'm in charge of my experience and like, I can find that safety within, and like, I mean, there's that never safe means like you could get hit by a car at any moment. Like, that's either or, so it's the contradiction, the like complexity and the paradox of just being in this world, but yeah, I think to really honor your experience and then like dig a little bit deeper into those layers of where that response is coming from. You know, like I mentioned, like, is that you, is that your past experience, you know, getting triggered or touched, you know, your past wounding? Is it your intimate edge, you know, or is it really this like relationship with this person? And then I think another piece that's really important and we don't often talk about is, I remember a friend saying, like, this was years ago, and she was talking about someone that she like just didn't really like vibe with. Like they just like there wasn't any drama, there wasn't anything wrong. They just like didn't vibe. And another friend said, if you don't like green beans, you don't like green beans. Like, you don't have to like everyone, you know? And it's, and I think that that's okay. And I think for as women, if we like, quote unquote, don't like someone, then we feel bitchy or like we're being mean. It's like that conditioning of like people pleasing or like being the nice girl, the good girl, where we have to like everyone and we have to, you know, maintain these friendships, even if we're like, yeah, we're not clicking. It's like, let yourself have your preferences. And maybe you don't want to say like, I don't like this person, but you could say, I don't prefer to spend time with this person. Like, like who do you actually enjoy? Like, who do you actually enjoy being with? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. Oh, so I don't even know. There's like so many thoughts coming in as you're talking, because I think just giving women permission that you don't have to like everyone. And that doesn't mean you're a bitch.
Yeah.
You don't have to be best friends with all of the best friends. And that doesn't mean you're not worthy. Yeah. And so I love the advice and the reminder and the permission to drop into your body wisdom and your intuition and say like, maybe this friendship has run its course and that's okay. Instead of adding the extra layer, which I know I have had to really walk this path, like really walk it of, am I making this mean something? If I'm not friends with my best friend since kindergarten, does that mean that there's something wrong with me? Because this girl is, and like, so she's a better woman, right? She's better than me. It's like marrying your high school sweetheart. It's cute if it works for you. And it's also cute if it doesn't. Like that, it doesn't matter. It's what we make it mean. And if we can just give ourselves permission to trust our intuition, like, okay, maybe we're just not a match, or maybe we had a good run and now we're no longer in a really healthy relationship. And so it's giving women that confidence to walk away or to part ways or to make choices that aren't steeped in revenge or competition, or I want to get the upper hand or have the last word. It's just like, I love you. I wish you nothing but the best. I think you understand why, like, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And the more that we can embody that way of being with other women, the more we can be those examples. It can ripple out. I hope. And it can lead to this new paradigm, which I know I've said the word paradigm like a million times, but it's like so hot right now in my mind because I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget. I don't think that either one of us has mastered like any of it really, but I do feel very proud of our friendship because I do feel that we are always in integrity with our truth and respectful of each other's truth in our friendship. And I realize the older I get, how incredibly rare and precious that is, because you said something to me that I wrote down that I think about it all the time. Because one time I had texted you and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm a horrible friend. I had the baby and the this and my mom's visiting and and constantly operating from this lack place of like, I'm going to disappoint her. Because that is my story. You know, like I grew up in a house where I was constantly disappointing my mother. And so I am terrified that I'm just always disappointing my friends. And so then I'm overcompensating. And you said to me, you wrote back, I love you however you are. And I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that one sentence, because to me, that was the perfect summary of the new paradigm of friendship. I don't need you. I don't expect anything of you. You don't owe me. I don't owe you. I don't seek my worthiness in you and vice versa. I just love you however you are.
Yeah.
I'm here. And sometimes I'm not here, sometimes I'm moving and it is busy, sometimes it's crazy and I do have to cancel but I love you however you are. So then it gives me permission to just be a hot mess sometimes and know that I'm not disappointing you because we are in a new paradigm of friendship where I don't ever have to go there. And I want that for you too. Like I know sometimes when we're talking, you're like, oh gosh, I've been talking forever. And I'm like, no, take up all the space. It is a pleasure and an honor to hold space for you as your friend. And also like no strings attached. Like I am here because my love language is quality time. So if I'm on your porch and you're sharing, like I feel so filled, like my cup is full. Like I made the choice. I took responsibility to be there. I'm there because I want to be there, not because I feel guilty, not because I feel like I should, not because, you know what I mean? It's just such this empowered way of thinking about friendship. And I think anybody could do this, but it's like you said, like there was a growth edge there for both of us where it was like, ooh, my old stories are coming up. Like, do I want to stay in those stories or do I want to try getting into a vulnerable conversation again and asking for what I need and then seeing like if maybe this friendship can go to the next level.
I know. Well, it's like, I've been really loving the Chani Nicholas. She's an astrologer and she has this really great app and it gives you like your weekly horoscopes. Ooh. And she said something in my horoscope a couple of weeks ago that was, I want more for my life than codependence. And I was like, yeah, that's it. I mean, there are levels of codependency, like, in marriages and things, or there's maybe like a little bit of, people kind of confuse what that word codependent means. But I think what you're speaking to is interdependence, which is like, I don't need you in order to be okay. You don't need me in order to be okay, but we know that we're better together and we choose to show up for one another. That like, I love you however you are does not apply to like treating someone like shit,
Right.
Or like if I feel like I'm
good disclaimer,
putting like love into this relationship and I'm receiving abuse or, like unavailability in return, like I'm not going to give that love, but I think it's like we sometimes will act out our wounding in relationship with our friends or our partners, where it's like we just, this day and age, we have to recognize that we all have a lot of pulls at our most precious resource, which is our time and resources, our time and energy, and so just really honoring that, like, if I don't see you for a little bit of time, that doesn't mean that like we're not friends anymore, but it may mean that, I've been going through a really rough time or we're in a fucking pandemic or, or like you're moving or whatever the things are. And it's like, there's almost this unspoken agreement. Well, spoken sometimes, now
we've spoken it
agreement where it's like I trust, like there's no drama between us. Like if I'm upset with you, I'm going to tell you,
yes,
but if you don't hear from me, that doesn't mean that I don't love you. And I think sometimes, like, again, back to what we were saying, like we make it mean things about us if someone doesn't respond. And I find like I do so much better with relationships if it's like, hey, like haven't heard from you in a while. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Like, do you want to catch up? Like, just come at it with that offer of love and like, how are you actually doing? And just trusting, like, it's up to somebody else to tell us how they are. It's up to someone else to tell us if they're upset or they're angry at us for whatever, like it's not about us to like figure out what's going on in someone else's experience. We get to choose how we want to show up in relationships. And, I recently had a friend like forget my birthday, and
was it me?
No, it wasn't you.
It was I already forgot it. I know it just happened.
And I was like, I was like, oh, well, that I kind of like had this moment of like, oh, that sucks. Like she didn't wish me a happy birthday. And I was like, you know what? She probably forgot. And it's okay because I forget people's birthdays, and her birthday came around and there was that moment where it's like, well, the old part of me, like, well, should I just like not, like, she forgot my birthday, that like wounded little girl. And I was like, F no, like, I love this person. How do I want to show up in this relationship, regardless of, like what, like how someone else, forgets or, like, it's just, it's really like tapping into how we want to be in these relationships. And honestly, like really honoring that, the dynamics and the health of the relationship as well. Like if it's an abusive relationship, like you can intend to show up in whatever ways that you wish, but you may be greeted with anything but health,
Right.
So I just want to honor that too.
Because the whole foundation of this premise that you were just speaking about is step one, drop into your body and your intuition and give yourself permission to let go of relationships that are no longer serving you and trust that if a relationship is for you, it's for you. And if it's not, it doesn't mean anything except you don't like green beans. And then from there, then if women were making all of their choices from that place, first, step one, tap into wisdom. Step two, now I'm safe. Like now I'm in integrity. So now nothing means anything. Like I don't have resentment or old baggage about any of this stuff because now I'm in integrity in these relationships. Right. And so I would say even for myself, like for some relationships that, I mean, I will be 37 on Tuesday. So this is a lot of years of relationships. Right. But I realized when we had when you have the edge and you try to fix things. And then I was like, I don't think that I can show up the way that this person needs me to show up. It wasn't even like this person is toxic. And it was like, oh no, I can't do it. I can't be there for them. Like, I don't have what this person needs. And so I need to let it fall away. I need to let it go. And then from there, you can really cultivate trust and like leaning into your growth edge for the relationships you do have left, because it's like, it doesn't mean anything. Nobody's bad or wrong. Like she isn't fucked up and you're better or worse. It's just like, you are who you are. You have the wisdom inside you to lean into whatever friendships like are meant for you. And I think just bringing it full circle to, seeing your little top bun at Dance FX. And I was like, yeah, she's one of my friends. She's like meant to be in my life, And then when we were talking, I was like, yeah, my mentor, like Cora, she's for you. She's for us. We can have the three of us.
Well, which actually brings to mind something that I was actually having a conversation with Cora recently, and we were talking about boundaries, and she said something that actually really kind of expanded my mind a little bit.
What? That is so unusual. Cora said something that expanded your mind and was profoundly deep and wise.
We love you, Coco. She said, your boundaries in relationship are like, I'm only available for healthy, like interdependent, love-filled relationships. And I was like, yeah, that is the boundary. Like sometimes we think of boundaries as being like, something that's kind of like rebellious or negative or like an
like blocking someone out.
Yes. And instead it's like, actually, no, like, let me focus on what I want to cultivate. And I think that's, sometimes when we have these experiences with other women that are problematic or challenging, or the cattiness or that old paradigm, as we're referring to it, kind of comes into play. And truly they can just be really big distractions from what's really going on inside of us. And we have the opportunity, I think, especially in communities, like conscious like gatherings of women, where we can say, how do I actually want to be in relationship with other women? Do I want to stay in this like mud puddle of like cattiness and BS and like gossiping and roll around in it until I'm dirty and messy and I feel like crap and everybody else feels like crap? Or do I want to actually like take a step out of that, place and really access a higher level of relating, a more true, more conscious, more, interdependent, again, that word, an interdependent way of relating, so that I actually can receive what I most deeply want, which is connection with someone else.
Yeah. It's more fulfilling and expansive too. I think when you when you elevate your friendships to that level. Cause I think sometimes we just don't want to change what is so constant in friendships. And so we're like, okay, yeah, we just get together and bitch about our kids and, complain about our husbands, and we don't know what else to talk about. But really, that's such a low energetic vibration. And then if you would just rise together, it's so much more of an expansive, fulfilling, satisfying friendship. Like you walk away from those conversations or catch ups and you just feel like your cup is full. That's literally the difference. And so it's like you can hang out with people and just feel like, oh, my cup feels actually emptier than when I came. And it's nothing to do with anything except that the vibe is like, oh, we just sat around and complained and stayed in victimhood the whole time. And I don't think I'm available for that anymore. Not because you're bad and I'm good, but just because I need to walk. If I spend time on something, it's got to fill my cup because time is precious. Yeah. So I'm only available for that which makes my cup overflow. And so
yes. And let's just also be clear that there's a difference between venting and really honoring an experience of frustration and anger.
Yes.
And then there's complaining. There's a much different energy there. And I think when we come to that question of well, what are we going to talk about except for bitching about our husbands and how the kids are driving us nuts? I would just like to offer two questions that come from this book, The Millionth Circle by Jean Shinoda Bolen. It's a really short, easy read. It's beautiful. But two questions. I often start women's circles with these. How am I really? And what is most important to me now? How am I really? And what is most important to me now? And that just kind of gets to the heart, if we allow it, to what the experience is, and gives us the opportunity to feel more nourished, more seen, more, just loved, really. Yeah. It's just a place of accessing what is real versus the complaining, because the complaining is
human. Of course, you're going to do it a little bit. I'm not saying I never have vented. I'm just saying couple minutes on the venting, then move on to how am I really? Yes.
Exactly.
I love you so much. Thank you for making time for this. This was so great. And I feel like everybody's going to want to know how they can experience your amazing gifts firsthand and keep in touch with you. So where should they go? I'm going to obviously, link your links in the show notes and all of that good stuff. But how can people keep in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram. You can just search my name, Stephanie Burg, Burg. I'm also on Facebook, and my website is stephanieburgcoaching.com.
Which your website is looking so sexy, by the way.
Thank you.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And thank you for your friendship. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You guys, isn't Stephanie the best? I love that conversation so much. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with another female in your life who needs to know that we are the paradigm shifters. We are the ones who get to heal these old wounds, do the work, and bring a new way of being in relationships into 2021 and beyond. If you're not following me on Instagram, that's where I share all of my new programs, my coaching downloads that I get. It's at Gervase Kolmos, GervaseKolmos. And if you're looking for that support from a 6-month container with me, the Femme Paradigm Mastermind is with me and 8 women for full alignment and embodiment of the untapped femme wisdom within you. There's 3 different levels of support that you can join. Check the show notes to see which is best for you, or check the link in my bio. And till next time, thanks so much for being part of our community.